And Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Nice to see you all on this Erev Shabbat. Hope you had a decent week, a good week, and a week that was nice, but also we can let go of that week because Shabbat's here. So we can breathe it out, and whatever was good can remain, and whatever was not so good, get it out. Because it is Shabbat, and we can transition into some peace and some relaxation. Hopefully, some challah. Well, not for you.
Not for me.
But challah. If you don't know us, if you're here for the first time, or you're visiting, or you're unsure who we are because you forgot, that's Cantor Muchnick over here. I'm Rabbi Keller over here. Nice to see everyone also on the live stream. Hello and welcome. We think it's working. It looks like it's working. We checked it. So hopefully you see us and hear us. And wherever you are on the planet, you are also enjoying the beginning of your Shabbat. If you are also new here, our prayer books are underneath your seats. You can just reach right under your seat, and there should be a book there. Magically, reach right under, and there should be a book. So if you don't have one, they should be right there. Make sure your cover of your book says Shabbat on it. That the cover of your book does not say weekday and festival. Make sure the cover says Shabbat, because we had some books that are mixed up sometimes. Also on our live stream, you can join us. Go to our website, cbiboca.org, and at the top left, press menu, and then services, and then you can scroll down a bit, and there'll be a virtual prayer book for you, so you can also pray along and chant along throughout our service. Our service tonight is going to be a little bit of Israel themed, since these last week, we went through Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel's Memorial Day and Israel's Independence Day. So we're going to have a little bit of an Israel theme in our music and in our conversation a little bit later. And so we'll be able to reflect a little bit on Israel. Good place to start, by the way, to get us in the mode and connection to Israel is Hatikvah. So if you want the words for Hatikvah, they're in your prayer books. They're on page 374, so I'll give you a chance to get there. Then when you get there, we'll ask you to stand. So it's 374. If you need the words for Hatikvah, for Israel's national anthem, 374, and together we stand. Now we have a little bit of Israel floating around us in connection to this previous week. We're going to also bring Shabbat into our midst. And so we can continue now on page 2, and we will invite Rita Dijan Tomaso to join us to light our Shabbat candles. Again, we are on page 2.
V'shanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu, lehadlik ner, shel Shabbat. Amen.
Now that we had a little Israel in our midst, now we have a little Shabbat in our midst, and that was sanctified with the lighting of Shabbat candles. We can sweeten that sanctification of our time with a little Kiddush. So you're just going to turn to one more page there on page 5, and we are going to continue with Kiddush.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pidri agafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho me'ahavahu v'ratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit. Ki hu yom techila lemikra kodesh zecher litziat Mitzrayim ki vanu vacharta viltanu kidashta mikol hamim v'shabbat kodshecha Be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen.
It's fine. It's fine today. It's all right. Thanks for letting me drink it first, though, before you tried it. I really appreciate that.
That's what friends are.
That's nice. Yeah. So we've talked a little about Israel. We have our Shabbat candles are lit. We are amidst Shabbat. We sweetened it with the words of Kiddush, and now we can continue with a little Kabbalat Shabbat, bringing in the Shabbat bride. We'll continue now with Psalm 96, which can be found on page 13. Continue now with the words of Lecha Dodi, the music of Lecha Dodi, the inspiration all the way from Shlomo Halevi, writing it in the 16th century in Tzfat, amidst his Kabbalistic connections, thinking, can I write something inspirational to connect us to Shabbat, to remind us of the entrance of the Shabbat bride? And so we continue on page 20 and 21, doing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. When we get to verse number 9, we'll stand and face the door to officially welcome in the Shabbat bride. Once again, 1, 2, 5, and 9, 20, and 21.
Dodi likrat kahala pene Shabbat nekabela lecha dodi likrat kahala pene Shabbat nekabela Shamol v'zachor eni bor echad hishmianu el hameyuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shem u'tiferet v'heli tchilah Dodi likrat kahala b'nei Shabbat ne'kabela likrat Shabbat echu b'necha ki hi mekor haberacha merosh mikedem ne'esucha sof ma'aseh b'machshavat tchila lecha dodi likrat kahala b'nei Shabbat ne'kabela Alayich nigla lecha dodi likrat kahala b'nei Shabbat ne'kabela lecha dodi likrat kahala b'nei Shabbat ne'kabela Oim shalom atet balagam besimcha uvetzola tochem unei am segula Moi chala lecha dodi likrat kahala b'nei Shabbat ne'kabela lecha dodi likrat kahala b'nei Shabbat ne'kabela Lai 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 ya la 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 lecha dodi likrat kahala b'nei Shabbat ne'kabela lecha dodi likrat kahala b'nei Shabbat ne'kabela
Please be seated. We continue now, transitioning from Kabbalat Shabbat into, in a moment, into the center part of our service, into our Arvit service, our evening service. Separating us will be Chatzi Kaddish, which can be found on page 26.
Yitgadal ve'yitkadash shemei rabba Be'hulma divrach yiruteh ve'yamlich malchuteh Becha yechon uv'yom mechon Uv'chai dechol beit Yisrael Ba'gala Uv'izman kari ve'imeru Amen Yehishmei Rabba Mevorach Le'olam Lol Mehamaya Yitbarach Ve'ishtabach V'yitpar v'yitroma v'yitnaseh Ve'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal Shemei dekudesha berichu le'ela Min kol berchata v'shirata Tushbechata v'nechemata Damiran be'olma ve'imeru. Amen.
We continue now with our call to worship with Baruch Hu, page 28, and together we stand. אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בדברו מעריב ערבים, בחוכמה פותח שערים ובבונה משנה עתים, ומחליף את הזמנים ומסדר את הכוכבים במשמעותם ברקיע כרצונו. Baruch atah Adonai hamariv aravim, blessed are you Adonai, who brings on the evening. He was born in Poland, and he died in 2022. And when then Prime Minister Lapid spoke at his funeral, he said that he transformed music forever, and that even though he died, his songs and his music would live on forever. And so we're speaking about a man named Tzvika Pik, who transformed not just music for us, music on the radio, but liturgical music and liturgy that I think you'll recognize in the moment when Cantor starts to take us into the words of Shema 34:35.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Vaed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Vaed.
Please be seated. We continue Vahafta 36, page 36.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Adonai Elohechem emet. We continue with our song of redemption now, Mi Chamocha, page 40.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש. נורא תהילות עושה מלכותך רעובנך, אלוקי הים לפני משה ומרים, זה אלינו ואמרו, זה אלינו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש. נורא עושה, נורא עושה, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts. We may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai hapores sukat shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. We continue with Hashkivenu, page 42.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom ve'hamidenu shomreinu lechayim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom ve'hamidenu shomreinu lechayim. Ushmor tzeiteinu uvoeinu lechaim ushalom me'ata ve'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom ve'hamidenu shomreinu lechayim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom ve'hamidenu shomreinu lechayim. Ushmor tzeiteinu uvoeinu lechaim ushalom me'ata ve'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom ve'hamidenu shomreinu lechayim.
We continue with the Amidah, page 46. Together we stand.
Adonai sifatai tiftachu fi yagi tehilatecha Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Koneh HaKol, V'Zocher Chaste Avot V'Imahot, U'Mevii Geulah Livnei B'neihem, Le'man Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Bezrat Sarah. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, חיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדום מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישוע, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. Baruch atah Adonai, mechayeh hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalalucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
We take some time now for our own silent prayers, thoughts, and meditations, beginning here on page 52, going through page 62. When you're finished, please be seated. Teddy Kolik, the then mayor of Jerusalem, spoke to a woman named Naomi Shemer and asked her if she would write a particular song for Jerusalem. And so he requested that she write that song for an event that they were having in May of 1967. She then wrote the song, and she then thought, I'm going to have someone else sing it. And her name was Shuli Natan. And so Shuli Natan sang the song, and it transformed everyone. People couldn't believe the tone, her melody, the words connecting, particularly for those of the residents of Jerusalem. This was again in May of 1967. And so they did a little tour for a few months of singing the song, particularly around troops. And then, if you know your Israeli history, in June of 1967 was the Six-Day War. And so she still would travel to the troops that were not on the front lines and sing the song to inspire them so that they would feel the connection to Jerusalem, even though they were fighting for Israel's life. And then she was about to take the stage at one of the concerts on that sixth day. And she was about an hour before, and it came over the radio that they had taken back Jerusalem. So she quickly sat down and she added another verse to her song to say, we got it. It's ours. Jerusalem is ours. And so if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. And we continue now with Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, and you can find it, if you'd like, on page 356.
Avir harim tsalul kayayim vereach oranim nisa beruach harabayim im kol pa'amonim uftar demat ilan va'evel shvuya b'chaloma אשר בדן יושבת ובליבה חומה ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור ירושלים של המים כיכר השוק ריקה ואין פוקדת הר הבית בעיר העתיקה ובמרות אשר בסלע מייללות רוחות ואין יושרד אל ים המלח בדרך יריחו ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור ירושלים של
if you look on page 357, you'll see there are 4 different paragraphs, and the first 3 were the ones in the original, and then she added the 4th one. And if you look at the second one versus the 4th one, how they correspond to one another, the second one that says how the cisterns have dried up, and the market square is empty, and no one attends the Temple Mount and the old city, and the caves in the rocks, winds moan, no one descends to the Dead Sea by the way of Jericho. And then you look at the 4th paragraph, and it says, we have returned to the cisterns, to the market, and to the square. A shofar calls out on the Temple Mount in the old city, and the caves in the rocks, thousands of suns shine. We will once again descend to the Dead Sea by the way of Jericho. And so we just finished this past week what's sometimes called a 3 Yoms. Actually, not Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur happens really early on in our Jewish year, but in the latter part of the year, there's something called the 3 Yoms, and that is Yom HaShoah, Yom HaZikaron, and Yom HaAtzmaut. And so they're separated because particularly Yom Kippur is deoraita. It is in the text. It's in the Torah that we're supposed to do it. These are new ones that we fortunately or unfortunately get to celebrate, particularly Yom HaShoah, something that we don't want to commemorate or think about, but must and continue to no matter what. And then, of course, Yom HaZikaron, a memorial day that takes place in Israel, that if you've ever been there or seen what that is like, is one of the most powerful days you might have ever experienced, with a siren going off at the beginning of the day, stopping traffic completely. A 1-minute siren that wherever you are, if you're in a bus, the bus stops, everyone comes off the bus and stands in the middle of a freeway. Can you imagine 95 just stopping? Well, it's usually stopped. But, so we should reimagine that. Can you imagine 95 actually moving and then stopping? I apologize. That then people coming out of the bus and staying there, and then everyone getting back in their cars and continuing to drive. The power of that. And then the siren, the second siren of that same day to end Yom HaZikaron, which then begins Yom HaAtzmaut. And that the Israelis, I think, do it best, better than anyone else, to balance the challenge, the pain, then the good and the pain. And so what an interesting way to take the Memorial Day and connect it literally to Independence Day. So there's a sharing of each of them. And so I'll share with you just a little bit of some heavy stuff, and then I'll end with light stuff. And that is, if you are reading the news in Israel, you know it is a very complicated situation that is right now in Israel. And there are protests that are so far peaceful, and there are different factions and different conversations in regards to what the future of Israel will hold, God willing. For some of us, I would presume most of us, are hoping for an Israel that will remain as it is right now, and not necessarily change. But there are different pieces that are happening, and so it is bringing a lot of sadness to Israel. Whatever side you're on, there's sadness in Israel about what's happening in Israel. And so on Yom HaZikaron, when heads of state gathered by the Kotel, by the Western Wall, President Herzog, the president of Israel, spoke. And he said, I appeal to you, my brothers and sisters, citizens of Israel, at this sacred moment. This is, of course, the saddest day on the calendar in Israel, because probably every single person in Israel knows someone that has died defending Israel, more than likely. So I appeal to you, my brothers and sisters, citizens of Israel, at this sacred moment. From here, what he calls the wall of longings and tears, from which the divine presence has never moved. And I ask us to mourn and grieve And he says, I ask us to mourn and grieve together. He said, may we let that feeling of longing envelop us together. May we let the sound of our collective pain ring loudly on this Memorial Day, free of discord as we cry for our sons and our daughters, is what he said on this past Remembrance Day on Monday. The cost of eternal strife is heavy, he said, at this sacred place, the Kotel, the Western Wall, where so many of our soldiers swear oaths to defend the homeland. If you don't know this, officially once training is over and Israeli soldiers become officially soldiers, every one of them goes to the Kotel. Every one of them goes to the Kotel, and every one of them gets a prayer book at the Kotel. That is the conclusion of their training before they become official soldiers. So he's referring to that, where so many of our soldiers swear oaths to defend the homeland. Now is the time to pledge once more. We have one army and one state, the IDF and the men and women who serve it. And then he says this, which I think is interesting. He says, all of us from all shades of this nation must find what connects and unites us. He says, no matter what factions, no matter what arguments there are. And he said, not only in our cemeteries, not only in our memorial services, we must entrench our covenant of life, commit to the unity of Israel, to the eternity of Israel, and to the Jewish and democratic state of Israel, is what he said for Yom HaZikaron. To balance out our days, though, there are 3 Yoms, and we had an opportunity on Yom HaShoah to discuss Yom HaShoah. We had a Yom HaShoah speaker. We had several speakers. Actually, we had our own congregant come and speak to us, Sam Ron. We also had a speaker on the actual day of Yom HaShoah. And then I just mentioned to you Yom HaZikaron. And now I want to end with a little bit more light, fun, and connectivity to Yom HaAtzmaut. If you've ever been to Israel on Yom HaAtzmaut, by the way, that is also incredible. I don't know why it is in Israel they find this important, but they have little rubber hammers that squeak, and everyone in Israel just suddenly has one. And wherever you walk on the street, you get a little bang on your head with a little rubber hammer, and it squeaks. And grown men and women are walking around and smacking each other on the head gently with a squeaky hammer to celebrate Israel's independence. Odd. So I'm going to invite you not only in Israel, but on July 4th to also buy a little rubber hammer and hit people on the head throughout the day and just see what happens. Let's just see what happens. I think probably nothing good might come from that, but little squeaky hammers and if they get upset, you'll be like, it's a little squeaky hammer. I'm just squeezing a little squeaky hammer. So there's a guy named Joel Chasnoff. If you don't know who he is, he's been on a comedy circuit for many, many years. He's a very funny guy. He has the best Jewish jokes. They're mostly groaners, but they're really funny. And so he has recently taken on a little bit of a serious view with a little mild humor. And so he wanted to share some thoughts about Yom HaAtzmaut, about Israel Independence Day, its 75th birthday. And he said, I know a lot's going on in Israel, but I think we should take a step back and just enjoy the fact that we have Israel. He said, just take a step back. There's lots going on. We can discuss it some other time. Today, just think about it's 75 years. We have Israel. This is awesome. So then he wants to talk about actually the word Israel. He says, this is the gift he said, I'm giving you. I want to talk about the word Israel in Hebrew. He said, it's pretty cool. So he says, I have 3 things to tell you about it. And I think you'll think they're pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool, but I'm a little bit of a Jewish dork. Okay, so don't say anything. Great. All right. So first he says the word Israel. So if you know how to spell in Hebrew, it's Yud, Shin, Resh, Aleph, Lamed. Israel. And so he says, actually, which I've never heard before, it's so cool. He says that each of those letters actually corresponds to our forefathers and our foremothers, actually, every single letter. He says that the Yud is Yitzchak and Yaakov. He says that the Shin is Sarah. He says that the Resh, the R, is Rebecca and Rachel. He says that the A, or the Aleph, is Abraham, and the Lamed, or the L, is Leah. And he says, buried into the word of Israel, not just the state of Israel, and the biblical concept of this wrestling that we have with Israel, but also the ancestors that connect to us also, that really are our ancestors, that they are our forefathers and our foremothers. So that's one. The other is that he talks about this idea. He actually has four different things. The second thing he talks about is the idea of gematria. Do we know what gematria? Gematria is that you take a Hebrew letter and it has a corresponding number. So an aleph is a 1, a bet is a 2, a gimel is a 3, and you can go through the whole alphabet. So he took Israel. He took the Hebrew word Israel, Yud, Shin, Resh, Aleph, Lamed, Israel, and that comes to 541. You don't have to check my math. I checked it. 541. So then what's cool about gematria is you can now look at other words in Hebrew that come to 541, if that makes sense. You can do this with your own name, by the way. You can think of your own Hebrew name and ask Cantor Muchnick. He'll do it for you. Don't ask me, ask Cantor Muchnick. And then we'll have a formal line after services, and everyone can go and ask Cantor Muchnick, and he'll tell you the number that corresponds to your Hebrew name. So 541 is Israel, and there are two things that he came up with. You see, there are a lot of options, but he came up with two. One is Hashem Yatzilenu, which means God saves us. And he said the second one is Anachnu Osim, which means we collectively take action. And he said they each add up to 541. And then he says he loves this connection because on the one hand, we must believe in God. That's what Jews do. It's what the Jewish community does. We believe in God, and we have faith. But also, in the Jewish community, we must take action. We must make change. We don't just sit idly by. And so he loves that connection. And finally, to end my little chat with you about Israel and some different connections for us in Israel, is his last collection of numbers of 541, and he said it can also add up to the word hitlonen, which means complain. Because even though we're connected and have faith in God, also the Jewish community, sometimes we do a little bit of complaining. So I hope that you will have a lovely Shabbat, not just thinking about Israel, but also with all of these connections and maybe a little bit of the ancestors that connect to us, the wrestling that we do, the fact that God and faith are mixed together with our action, and that also sometimes it's okay for us to complain a little bit once in a while. Shabbat Shalom. We think of those in our community who are in need of healing, physical, emotional, or spiritual healing. We are thinking of Annie Rosenfield, Abigail Menjivar, Asher Ben Karen Fay, Barbara Newmark, Bonnie Kleinman, Brian Church, Daniel Bernstein, David Field, Dr. Elise Karnick, Evelyn Greenfield, Gary Baker, Gary Bandel, Gary Kane, Harav Avraham Ben Yehudit, Howard Kleinberg, Howard Rosenbluth, Ira Kafka, Itza Chana Bella Bat Rivka, Janet Cohen, Janet Fortier, Diane Browernick, Yael Bat Sarah, Stuart Benson, Joan Seidman, J.R. Morano, Lillian Bichelle, Lillian Rosenblatt, Marie Allen, Mark Davis, Naomi Kirstein, Rachel Bat Shoshana, Rena Fields, Richard Rosenbluth, Richard Shankman, Diane Spiro, David K., Robert K., Sherry Martin, Shana Call, Shirley Kafka, Sloan Caston, Tova Gould, Tova Bat Sarah Ariel Lev, Zahava Golda Bat Nechama, Lisa Bonaire, Ryan Seidman, Stanley Geddes, Eric Kupferberg. To those names, we had any name that you'd like to add at this time.
Mark Recklin.
Meir Shabbat can be found on page 253 in your Siddur.
May the source of strength will bless the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say,
We have some announcements for you on this Erev Shabbat. It's a pleasure to invite up two cannons. Is that right? Both cannons? One cannon. Which cannon? Jeff Cannon. All right. Jeff Cannon's going to come up, our immediate past president of our board of directors. Andrea Cannon is also here, our VP of development, but she's going to stay there and wave. All right, great. Okay. Shabbat Shalom. Why is that on? There. I'll give you two. There you go.
Shabbat Shalom. On behalf of Congregation B'nai Israel's Board of Trustees, I want to wish all of our members and guests a welcome, happy Shabbat Shalom, and welcome to Congregation B'nai Israel. Thank you to the entire clergy for a meaningful and spiritual Erev Shabbat service. And I was a little boy when that song first came out, and I remember the cantor singing it. All the women were crying, and I didn't know what it was about, but to this day, it's a very emotional song. The Torah learning service will be held in our chapel tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. Chapel is down the hall. We hope to see everyone at the Taste of Broadway tomorrow night, April 29th at 7 p.m. We'll enjoy tastes of food and drink from VIP caterers, followed by a New York-style concert of musical hits performed by our very own Cantor Muchnick and accompanied by a cast straight from Broadway. The Mahjong Club, hosted by Sharon Landau, our president, takes place in the Hollander Family Chapel on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. and on Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., excuse me. Beginners are welcome. Come and play. And please check our website at congregationbnaiisraelcbi.org for all of our upcoming events, and hope to see you around the summer. Shabbat Shalom.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, if you didn't notice, the Bima looks a little weird tonight. It's a little plain. We don't have our little podiums up there. There's no flowers. It's kind of because it's in preparation for tomorrow night. So we've moved everything so that tomorrow night for the spectacular, fabulous concert, it'll all be ready. We have all kinds of stars from all around the country, right? Performing, all Broadway, all touch Broadway. And of course, Cantor Muchnick is going to be there as well. I tried several times to join the crew to sing, and each time it was a no. So I'll just be sitting here, enjoying the concert from my seat. It's fine, though. I'm okay. All right. We're going to begin to conclude our service with Aleinu 282, and together we stand.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגור עלינו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו echad.
A love letter to the world that may or may not deserve it. Dear world, we've been through a lot together over the past 8 decades. You and I, marriages, births, deaths, fulfillment and disappointment, war and peace, good times and hard times. There were days when you were more generous to me than I could possibly have deserved. And there were days when you cheated me out of things I felt I was entitled to. There were days when you looked so achingly beautiful that I could barely believe you were mine. And days when you broke my heart and reduced me to tears. But with it all, I choose to love you. I love you whether you deserve it or not. And how does one even measure that? I love you in part because you are the only world I have. I love you because I like who I am, and I feel better when I love you. But mostly I love you because loving you makes it easier for me to be grateful for today and hopeful about tomorrow. Love does that. The words of the great Dr. Rabbi Harold Kushner, who passed away today. Thinking about him, we transition now to, in a moment, to Kaddish Yatom, to Mourner's Kaddish. Here at CBI for our yard sites, we think of Sylvia Braver, Leona Costin, Rana Tashoff, Pedro Schmeichler, Carol Hirschhorn, Hyman Greenberg, Harry Meyerson, Ann Skolnick, Tilly Feder, Gertrude Lukumnik, Jerry Ostroy, Rose Lech, Marilyn Levy, Lauren Tracy Stern. To those names, we had any name that you'd like to add at this time. Kadishatom 294. Yitkadal v'yikadash mirabah, ve'alma divrach cherutei ve'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevorach le'olam olamei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei l'kudesha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran b'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlam rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel as together we say, amen. Please be seated. We'll do a little motzi, and then, all right, great, let's do a little motzi. When I say little motzi, I mean a little motzi.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Pretty good. With our Israel connective service in this Erev Shabbat, we conclude with the very beautiful and very powerful words that describe Israel both as something very sweet, but also occasionally might have a little bit of a sting to it. The words of Al Kol Ele, which can be found on page 347. 347.
Al hadvash ve'al ha'oketz, al hamar ve'hamatok, al biteinu ha'tinoket, shmorei li ha'tov, al ha'esh ha'mevoeret, al ha'mayim hazakim, al ha'ish ha'tov habayta min ha'merchakim, al kol shmor na li eli hatov, al hadvash ve'al ha'oketz, al hamar ve'hamatok, al hata'akor natzuha, al tishkach et ha'tikvash, al shiveni ve'ashuva el ha'aretz ha'tova. For the honey and the bee sting, for the bitter and the sweet, all the things which join as one to make our lives complete, for the future of our children, for our prayers will never cease, for the hope that with tomorrow comes a world of peace. Al kol ele, shmor na li eli hatov, al hadvash ve'al ha'oketz, al hamar ve'hamatok, al hata'akor natzuha, al tishkach et ha'tikva, ashiveni ve'ashuva el ha'aretz ha'tova.
May God who gives strength unto our people continue to bless us with hope and strength and love and peace. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Shabbat shalom.